The year is 1614. In the snow-covered mountains of Kai, a province controlled by the Takeda clan, the sound of a Buddhist bell echoes for the last time through a valley that will never hear it again. Inside the Jisoji Temple, 16 Buddhist nuns kneel in morning prayer, their voices whispering sutras they have recited for decades. But this morning, the words taste different. They taste of ash, of farewell. Outside the wooden and paper walls, the horizon stains red. Not with sunrise, but with the banners of a clan that had already swallowed whole temples. The Tokugawa samurai do not march. They flow like a current of steel and fire, extinguishing everything in their path. Sister Kyoko, the abbess, holds a Buddhist rosary that has survived 4 generations. Her hands tremble, but not from fear. She knows what is coming. They all do. What they do not know, what no one could have imagined, is that death would have been a mercy. Because what happened next was not written in any history book you studied at school. It was buried, erased, hidden beneath centuries of silence. Until now. What the samurai did to these women was not merely conquest. It was something far more calculated, something historians are only just beginning to uncover. The question isn't whether you can handle the truth, it's whether you're willing to remember it. If you've ever wondered why certain stories vanish from history while others are told again and again, you're in the right place. We dig through the archives the world forgot, letters from Jesuit missionaries, the shogunate's secret records, testimonies buried in Zen temple files. Every view, every like, every subscription helps us pull one more voice out of the dark. Now let's return to that temple, because the bell has fallen silent and the doors are about to splinter. To understand what happened to these nuns, you need to understand the machine that consumed them. 3 years earlier, in 1611, the Edict of Christian Expulsion had been proclaimed. But what the official story does not tell is that this persecution was not limited to Christians. Any religious practice that threatened the shogunate's absolute control was in the crosshairs. Jisoji Temple had been a sanctuary for women for more than 300 years, nuns who preserved sacred texts during the Genpei Wars, women who kept the Buddhist tradition alive when warlords burned temples for sport. Every sutra recited, every offering made, every candle lit was an act of silent defiance, proof that the old world refused to die. So the shogun made a decision. If they would not submit, they would disappear. Not by massacre. Massacre creates martyrs. Martyrs inspire resistance. Songs are written. Stories are told. The dead become immortal. The Tokugawa had perfected something far more elegant, something that left no songs, no stories, no memory. Erasure. By 1614, this strategy had been tested across the realm. Zen temples in Kyoto, Shinto shrines in Nara, hidden Christian convents in Nagasaki. Perched on a hillside in Kai, far from any garrison or ally, Jisoji was about to become another test case, another footnote in a regime's expansion. But these women did not know they were footnotes. They were not warriors. They were women who had spent their entire lives in silence and prayer. Their weapons were rosaries. Their armor was faith. Most had never seen a samurai, never held a blade, never imagined they would need to. Sister Kyoko had been abbess for 15 years. Before that, she cared for orphans in a village that no longer existed, swallowed by famine in 1602. She came to the temple not to escape the world, but to make sense of it. Sister Masako was 22, having taken her vows only 3 years earlier. Her hands still bore calluses from her father's rice farm. She joined the temple after her family was killed in a bandit raid. Sister Sachiko was 73. She had outlived 2 shogunates, 1 emperor, and more wars than she could count. She had stopped fearing death decades earlier, but none of them had faced this. If this moment in history doesn't move you to learn more, you may be missing the lesson our ancestors died to teach, that the most dangerous thing you can do in the face of power is refuse to forget who you are. Now watch what happens when faith meets empire. The first war cry echoes just after dawn. It does not strike the main hall, it strikes the bell tower. The sound is apocalyptic. Wood explodes into the air. Metal screams against metal. The bell that rang every morning for 200 years shatters mid-swing, and its pieces rain down on the rock garden where the sisters grow medicinal herbs. The same hands that tended those plants now cover their ears, trembling. Sister Kyoko does not scream. She rises, rosary held high, and begins to chant, Namu Amida Butsu, I entrust myself to Amida Buddha. One by one, the others join her, 16 voices rising against the roar of an empire. But empires do not listen to songs. By noon, the gates are breached. Tokugawa samurai flood the courtyard, not with drawn swords, but with ledgers, brushes, inkwells. They move through the temple like clerks, not conquerors, counting, recording, cataloging. Because to the Tokugawa, these women are not people, they are property. A translator steps forward, a Zen monk who once lived in these mountains. His voice trembles as he reads from a scroll, and you can hear the shame buried in every word. By order of Shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu, all subjects in the controlled territories must submit to the shogunate's authority. Those who convert will receive protection. Those who refuse will face the consequences of rebellion. Sister Kyoko steps forward. Her face is calm, almost serene. She speaks not to the soldiers but to the translator, in Japanese so clear everyone understands. Tell your shogun we have already given our lives to Amida Buddha. We have nothing left to surrender. The officer in charge, a man named Matsudaira Yoshinao, whose name appears in Tokugawa military records from the 1614 Kai campaign, does not answer with anger. He answers with something far more frightening, a smile, because he knows something the nuns do not yet understand. The Tokugawa perfected the art of breaking people without killing them. That night, the women are locked inside their own prayer hall. No food, no water, only darkness and the sound of soldiers outside, laughing, eating, living as they wait to see who breaks first. Two sisters, younger ones from Shinano, begin to cry in the corner. Their sobs echo off the wooden walls. But Sister Masako, only 22, begins to whisper a sutra. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Then another, Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhi svaha. And slowly, the crying stops. Here is where the Tokugawa misjudged them. These women had spent their entire lives preparing for suffering. Fasts, cold night watches, hours of silence, submission to something greater than themselves. What the soldiers considered torture, the nuns recognized as their daily discipline. But Matsudaira Yoshinao is patient. He has seen this before, in Zen temples of Kyoto, in Shinto shrines of Nara, in the ruins of Christian convents where nuns believed their faith would save them. Faith is like a candle, he once wrote in a letter to the shogun, still preserved in the Edo Castle archives. It burns brightest just before it dies. He is about to test that theory. On the second day, the doors open. A servant enters with rice and tea, real food, clean tea. He places everything on the floor without a word and leaves. The nuns look at it. Their throats are dry, their stomachs empty. The younger sisters look to Kyoko, despair in their eyes. Sister Sachiko, the eldest, speaks first. They want us to take it, to feel gratitude, to soften. Kyoko nods. Then we fast. They do not touch the food. By the third day, their lips are cracked and bleeding. Their hands shake. The younger sisters can barely stand, but they do not break. Matsudaira watches from the courtyard, arms crossed. He is impressed, frustrated, and perhaps for just a moment something like respect flickers across his face. But respect does not change strategy. On the third day, the doors open again. This time it is not a servant. It is Matsudaira himself. He speaks in formal Japanese, the translator trailing him like a shadow. You are not criminals. You are not enemies. You are simply mistaken. The shogun is merciful. He offers new lives, new names, protection. All you must do is speak the words. Silence, or you may come with us to Edo. There, the shogun himself will hear your case. Perhaps he will be moved by your conviction. He pauses, lets the words settle. But the road is long, and the weak do not survive it. Not a threat, a promise. Sister Kyoko looks to her sisters. Some are barely conscious. Some pray with eyes closed. Some stare at the floor, trying to draw strength from the wood. She turns back to Matsudaira. We will walk. The smile returns to his face. Good. We depart at dawn. That night, the nuns embrace in the dark. No one speaks. But Sister Masako begins to hum, softly, a Vesper Sutra. One by one, the others join her. Outside, the soldiers listen. Some fall silent. Some look away. One of them, years later, will tell his grandson about the women who sang to their deaths. But that story will be forgotten too. For now, the chant rises through the cracks in the hall and drifts into the night. A prayer, a plea, a declaration. We are still here. They leave at dawn on the fourth day. 16 women, hands bound with rope, walking east toward the capital. No carts, no horses. Only their feet, the dust, and a sun that shows no mercy. The soldiers do not hurry them. They don't have to. The road itself is the punishment. On the second day, Sister Aiko collapses. She is 65. Her knees have been failing for years. She tries to stand, but her legs will not hold her. The soldiers do not wait. Sister Masako and another nun, Sister Hana, lift her between them and carry her for the next 5 miles. When they finally stop for the night, Aiko is unconscious. By morning, she is gone. They bury her by the roadside with their hands. No tools, no ceremony, only earth and whispered prayers. The soldiers watch. They do not interfere. Matsudaira makes a note in his register. 15 remain. On the 5th day, it happens again. Sister Tomoko, who has not spoken since the siege, simply stops walking. She sits down in the middle of the road, closes her eyes, and does not rise. They leave her there. When they reach Edo 10 days later, only 12 remain. But something happened on that road, something that Tokugawa did not anticipate. The nuns stopped crying. They stopped pleading. They walked in silence. Not the silence of defeat, but the silence of women who had already made their choice. Sister Kyoko had been walking at the head of the line, leading them even with her hands bound. But on the morning of the 10th day, Matsudaira Yoshinao calls for her. She is taken to his tent, alone. What happens next is not described in Tokugawa records. It is described in a letter from a Dutch merchant who witnessed the aftermath, a letter discovered in 2007 in the archives of the Dutch East India Company in Amsterdam. He writes, "I saw them bring her back at dawn. She could not walk. Her eyes, God forgive me, her eyes were open, but she was no longer within them. They dressed her in silk and paraded her through the camp as a convert. But when I passed near, I heard her lips moving. She was still praying, in Sanskrit, silently. She had not broken. They merely took her body and left her soul to wander." This is the Tokugawa strategy. History does not teach you. They did not want martyrs. Martyrs inspire resistance. Songs are written. Stories are told. The dead become saints. They wanted ghosts, women who would walk, speak, eat, breathe, but never be whole again. Living proof that rebellion was useless. Living warnings to anyone who thought faith could resist empire. Sister Kyoko walked with them the rest of the way to the capital, but she never spoke again. She never met anyone's eyes. She was there, but she was not. The younger sisters wept when they saw her. The elders only prayed more intensely. At the port of Edo, they are loaded onto a galley, a massive warship with rows of benches and chains bolted to the wood. This is not a passenger vessel. It is a craft designed for control, slaves, prisoners, cargo. The nuns are chained to the benches, wrists locked to iron rings. A ship's manifest, discovered in 1994 in Japan's National Archives, lists them not by name, but by number. Religious captives, female, 12. Destination, imperial household. Purpose, domestic service and conversion. That word, service, is doing a lot of work. The voyage lasts 8 days. The sea is not kind. Storms lash the deck. Salt spray burns their cracked lips. The ship pitches and rolls, and the women, who have never seen the ocean, vomit until nothing remains. At night, the youngest, Sister Masako, whispers sutras under her breath. Her voice is faint, barely audible over the breaking waves. But the other prisoners, Japanese, Korean, Dutch, men and women chained beside them, turn their heads to listen. For a moment, the sea seems to calm. When the ship finally enters Edo Bay, the sisters see the capital's skyline rise before them. Castles, pagodas, walls that seem to stretch forever. The city gleams in the morning light like a blade. For centuries, it had been called the Shogun's city. Now it would become their cage. From the docks, they march through narrow streets lined with merchants, soldiers, and slaves. People stop to stare. Buddhist nuns among the captives are a rarity. Even in an empire built on conquest, this is unusual. They are led past the old walls, through the imperial district, past gardens where fountains sing and peacocks cry. And then, in the shadow of Edo Castle, the great fortress that now rules all Japan, they are forced to stop and kneel. As the call to morning prayer echoes from Zen temples, one sister whispers, "We are home, but it is no longer ours." They are taken into the palace, but not to grand halls, not to courtyards where envoys stroll and ministers scheme. They are taken below, down stone steps spiraling into darkness, through tunnels that smell of damp and decay, to a place that does not officially exist. If you're still watching, it's because part of you knows this story must be told. Subscribe to Crimson Historians, not for us, for them, for the voices swallowed by silence. Now follow them into the dark. Beneath Edo Castle lies a network of tunnels tourists never see. Storehouses, servants' rooms, forgotten corridors snaking through rock like veins. And in the farthest corner, sealed for centuries, a room with no official purpose. In 2018, during restoration work, archaeologists broke through a false wall. What they found froze them in place. Scratched into the stone, barely visible, were Buddhist symbols, dozens of them, small, rough, carved with fingernails or shards of broken pottery. And beneath those symbols, etched in Sanskrit, 4 words, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is truly Brahman. This was their chapel. For months, perhaps years, these women lived beneath the palace, working as silent servants by day, scrubbing floors, washing clothes, tending fires for rooms they would never enter. But at night, when the palace slept, they gathered in this forgotten room and prayed. They had no priest, no altar, no sutras, only memory. They recited sacred texts by heart, half-remembered verses reshaped into prayers that kept them alive. They chanted mantras in whispers so faint the stone barely caught them. They made offerings with rice stolen from the kitchens and water from the palace wells, and they carved their faith into the stone, one scratch at a time, knowing no one would ever see it. Sister Masako was among them, the girl who whispered sutras on the ship, who carried Sister Aiko on the road, who refused to look away when they brought Sister Kyoko back in silk. She became their voice in the dark. The archaeologists found her mark as well, a small lotus flower scratched into the corner of the wall. Beside it, 12 lines, one for each sister, but only 6 were complete. The others faded into nothing. They used broken pottery as candle holders, a strip of linen as an altar cloth. From a shard of shattered mirror, they fashioned a crude sacred symbol. In this secret chapel, they met every night after the palace slept. No chants, no sermons, only whispers. Each woman knelt and shared a memory, a home, a temple bell, the warmth of rice before dawn. These memories became their new sutras, small offerings to a Buddha who still listened in the dark. A Dutch prisoner held at the palace for ransom in 1622 wrote of strange voices echoing beneath the women's quarters, women singing in Sanskrit to a god not of this empire. For centuries, historians dismissed it as superstition until the chapel was found. But here is the heartbreak. The symbols stop. In the middle of the wall, the scratches grow erratic, desperate. The lines deepen as if carved with more force, more urgency. Then, Nothing. Tokugawa records from 1628 mention a cleansing of palace staff under the new shogun. Anyone deemed unproductive or resistant was removed. No details, no names, no burial sites, just a single line in a register written in neat Japanese script. Discarded. The nuns of Jisoji vanished from history. 12 women who had walked 10 days through hell, crossed the sea in chains, and carved prayers into stone in the dark, gone. But their chapel remained. A French diplomat in 1854 wrote of a rumor among the palace's older servants that on certain nights, if you lingered in the lower corridors, the air grew cold, and if you listened closely, you could hear women singing in Sanskrit. He dismissed it as superstition, the foolish beliefs of uneducated servants. But walls do not lie. In 2018, when archaeologists examined the chapel more closely, they found something else. Traces of wax, not Tokugawa candles, but of a different, older kind mixed with herbs. The type of candles nuns made in temples, which means they kept their vigil longer than anyone thought. Months, perhaps years, scratching symbols, whispering prayers, refusing to disappear. Sister Masako's lotus was the last mark on the wall. Beside it, scratched so faintly they were almost not there, 2 words in Japanese. We resisted. But the truth is, they did more than resist. They left behind something empires could not erase. A room full of sacred symbols, a prayer carved into stone, proof that faith could survive where walls and chains could not. The Tokugawa shogunate lasted until 1868, 250 years of control and power. But in the end, it was those scratches on the wall that endured, not the shogun's decrees, not Matsudaira Yoshinao's records, not the silk they dressed Sister Kyoko in. Only 4 words in Sanskrit carved by women the world forgot. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is truly Brahman. So why does this story matter? Because it's not about religion, or even about the Tokugawa. It's about what power does when it tries to erase people, and what happens when those people refuse to disappear. The Tokugawa shogunate lasted 250 years. They controlled all Japan. They rewrote laws, entire cultures. They turned samurai into bureaucrats and monks into civil servants. But they could not erase 12 women who scratched prayers into stone. Think about that. An empire with armies, castles, limitless resources, and the will to reshape the world, set against women with nothing but fingernails and faith. And the women won. Not in the way empires measure victory. They did not reclaim their temple, did not convert their captors, did not live to see freedom. But they left a mark. History is written by the winners. Memory is written by the survivors. And sometimes survival looks like a sacred symbol carved in the dark, where no one was ever meant to see it, a prayer whispered in a language the conquerors tried to silence. A lotus scratched into stone to remember the sisters who fell. Centuries later, we found it anyway. Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." These women lived forward in the dark. They walked 10 days knowing they might not survive. They crossed the sea in chains knowing what waited on the other side. They descended into tunnels beneath a palace knowing they might never see sunlight again. But they carved their prayers anyway, trusting that someone, someday, would look back and find them. You just did. In 2018, as the archaeologists stood in that hidden chapel staring at those symbols, one of them asked a question that still haunts me. How long did they keep the vigil? The wax traces suggest years. The depth of certain carvings suggests desperate, repeated effort, which means these women gathered night after night, year after year, in absolute darkness, and refused to stop believing. Even as sisters disappeared, even as the scratches on the wall stopped multiplying, even when hope should have died, they kept carving. That is not merely faith. It is defiance in its purest form. The Tokugawa shogunate is gone now, dissolved in 1868. Its shoguns are dust. Its armies are memory. The palace still stands, but it is a museum now. Tourists walk its corridors taking photos, unaware of what lies beneath their feet. But those symbols remain. And that Sanskrit line, barely visible after 400 years, still speaks. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is truly Brahman. It is from the Upanishads, a verse about the unity that cannot be extinguished, about the truth that survives even when everything else is taken away. Sister Masako carved those words knowing she would never leave that palace, knowing her name would be forgotten, knowing the world would move on without her. But she carved them anyway because she understood something empires never do. You can conquer land. You can rewrite history. You can erase names from records and bury bodies in unmarked graves. But you cannot kill what people carry within, and you cannot silence what they carve into stone. You have just witnessed one of history's darker truths. If stories like this remind you how fragile humanity is, how easily voices can be erased, then subscribe to Crimson Historians and help keep the past alive. Because some voices deserve to be heard, even if they were silenced centuries ago, especially then. The nuns of Jisoji were meant to disappear. That was the plan. Erase them, break them, turn them into ghosts, converts, or footnotes in Tokugawa records. But they did not disappear. They are still here. In those symbols, in that Sanskrit line, in the chapel archaeologists found 4 centuries later. And now, they are here with you, because you listened, because you remembered, because you refused to let their silence be the final word. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is truly Brahman. Unity shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it.